Most people that know me know my story about how COVID has affected my life. But I decided to create a YouTube video to explain what I went over. It's been almost exactly 1 year since I was hospitalized due to COVID-19, and I thought it'd be a good idea to put it on video. In March 30th of 2021, my breathing got really bad after showing symptoms of COVID for about a week, and I asked my wife to take me to the emergency room. I was trying to go to sleep. It was a Monday night, and my breathing was so severe, and like I was panting so much that I couldn't sleep. Basically, imagine trying to run, as fast as you can for 100 meters and then putting your head on a pillow. That's how I felt. So she took me to Beth Israel, Mount Sinai, the Lower East Side, and right away, the emergency room, they took me in, they did some tests on me, and realized that I had COVID-19, and my condition was pretty severe. Within 45 minutes, they were pumping oxygen into me. Luckily, I did not have to be intubated, but it was still scary. They put me in a separate room. Imagine being isolated away from everybody else, because that's how they treated everyone with COVID, where I was almost like a meat locker. So I had a little window. It was probably 8 inches by 8 inches, where I kind of saw the life of what's going on and everything, but really didn't know anything else besides that. The nurse that night was amazing. He was attentive to me. He came to me every hour or so to help me out. He saw I was having a lot of trouble, which was great. But then the nurse the next day kind of forgot about me, and it was a struggle. I was in that room for 16 hours. They finally put me in my own room, and I felt good. It felt nice to have my own space. I thought, okay, now I could rest. Now I could start recovering. That first night in my own room, I couldn't sleep. Every time I put my head on the pillow, my entire body would shake. It's hard to explain, but imagine putting your head down, you're about to sleep, and then everything just shakes uncontrollably. I like to think that was my body telling me, don't go to sleep. If you go to sleep, this will get worse. Who knows if you'll see tomorrow. I did feel like I could have been at that point. It's hard to tell, thinking back on it now. But in any case, I just, had my phone. I watched Netflix. I played video games. I stayed up that entire night. I did not go to sleep. The next day, they increased my oxygen intake. They actually gave me like a mask, almost like a fighter pilot mask, if you can imagine that. And I started feeling a little better, but my numbers weren't looking good. Day by day, my numbers after that, a couple days after, my numbers were looking worse. And what I thought was going to be 3, 4, 5 days in the hospital was drawn out much more. But the 4th, 5th day in, they did a CAT scan on me. They wanted to take a look at my lungs, and sure enough, that's where the problem resided. I had 2 blood clots in my lungs. Imagine that. Before having COVID, I did CrossFit. I raced bikes for 2 years. I ran a marathon in 2019. I did several triathlons in 2019. I would think I'm one of the last people you would think that would have a blood clot. I'm not to mention in 2020, I became a pescatarian. So I eat very healthy as well. But nonetheless, COVID got me, and they upped my medications and gave me this high-powered blood thinner that felt like I had to get stabbed twice a day, but it worked. I started feeling better. The path to going home was starting to be paved. I could tell my numbers were getting better after that. I started feeling a little more life in me, and all that stuff was going well. My last week in the hospital was probably the most challenging. It was on a Monday where a doctor came in and said, I think your numbers look pretty good. We're going to take the mask off, and we're going to put just a nasal cavity and lower your oxygen intake, because in order for you to go home, you could only be at a certain level. And that was the key. That was the goal. The goal was to get to just that nasal device. And he put it on me, and I felt like this weight off my shoulders. I felt amazing. And 30 minutes later, he came back and said, your numbers are not getting better. We got to put the mask back on. And I was defeated. I was destroyed. It was a tough day. I called my wife. I was texting her constantly, telling her how I felt. And, I'm very fortunate to be with the woman I'm with, who just filled me with positivity, and, you know, just things will get better. Things will get better. Don't worry. You know, in fact, my time in the hospital was okay thanks to her. The calls, the muffins she brought me, visiting me every single day. I don't know what I would have done if I didn't have that. And my family and my friends and everyone else that supported me during that time was just amazing. If you have someone that's in the hospital, go visit them, because it's a lonely place. But most of that day, I had to battle with myself and try to figure out, okay, this is not me. I can't give up. I gotta try. So the next day came, and the doctor came through, and he did the same thing. About 30 minutes later, he came back and said, "Mr. Paris, I'm really sorry, but we got to put the mask back on." And, you know, that's where frustration really filled my everything. I just wanted to punch every wall around me, but I couldn't. I was too weak. But another part of me took over and said, this is not you. This is not the time to quit. This is not the time to just, you know, you got to get out of this place. The only way to get better is to go home. And something came over me that day, and my body did what it had to do to send me home. I started feeling different. By that evening, it's almost like I got a second wind. And the next day came in, and I prepared myself, and he took the mask off again and put the nasal cavity in me. And a couple hours went by, and I said, well, where did this doctor go? And then he came back and said, oh, I'm so sorry. By the way, your numbers look great. You're going home this week. And the triumph, just the sheer, you know, the victory that I experienced that day was, you can't really almost put it into words. And a couple hours later, the head doctor came, and she usually came to my bedside with a dull look on her face, and she came with this big smile on her face, and she said, "You're going home." And that was great. You know, it took a couple days for me to finally go home, of course, but, you know, by the time I did go home, it was 19 days that I was in the hospital. Yeah, that's what COVID did to me. And the road wasn't done there. Upon getting home, you know, they sent me home with an oxygen tank, and no one really told me how long I was going to have to be in the oxygen tank. So I did what I did that last day, that day that I had to test myself, and I just figured it out. You know, little by little, I took the oxygen out. I gave myself less oxygen. I started feeling almost useless at that point. You know, when you're home, you're in a hospital, all you can think about is recovering, get better. But then you go home, and it's, well, now I have my family's here, my kids are here, I have a house to take care of, I have a wife, I have a dog, I have my parents, everyone, you know, and everyone keeps telling me, get better. Your job is to get better, and that's what I did. I'll never forget. I had a doctor's appointment, a follow-up, and my father dropped me off. I didn't want to bring the oxygen tank. I said, let me try it. It's really close to the house. And by the time my appointment was over, I walked home. And I saw my dad, and my dad gave me this evil look, and I said, Dad, this is how I'm going to get better. Today I walked 2 blocks. Tomorrow I'll walk 3. The day after I'll walk 4. The day after that I'll walk 5. And ultimately that is how I got better. I slowly started exercising. I slowly started walking a little more. After a couple weeks of walking, actually, unfortunately, COVID gave up on my lungs. Said, this guy got the lungs beat. Let's go attack something else. And my extremities started really bothering me. I had severe issues in both of my big toes. I thought it was arthritis, but I can't explain the pain to anyone. It's like someone was stabbing me in the foot in the middle of the night. And I had to deal with that for a few weeks. It was tough. First it was the left foot, then it was the right foot, then it was the left ankle, then it was the right foot again, then it was my left knee. It just kept going back and forth. And then finally, as I started getting healthier, the pain went away, and I started riding my bike a little, because I figured, okay, it's not impact. I don't have to worry about, you know, my feet hitting the ground or anything like that. And then when I started feeling a little bit better, I started lifting weights. Not crazy, of course. Went to a gym, very calm, light stuff, just machines, things like that. And little by little, I started becoming more active. I was not going to let COVID beat me up like that. I was not going to, you know, everyone told me to take a break for a long time, and I don't think that's the way to do it. You know, I think the idea is to, you know, ease your body back into life. And that's what I did. And 6 months after that, I started going back to CrossFit. It was in September, so that was, you know, roughly 6 months. And I was not going to crush any of the workouts. The goal was to do well. And I did, you know, and little by little, I started doing CrossFit more and started pushing myself a little bit more. And then I started running again. Then I started riding my bike really hard. And I even I swam a little bit this past few months. So here I am a year later, and I could tell you that, you know, COVID does not have everlasting effects on me. In fact, it's pushed me to create this YouTube channel, and the purpose of this YouTube channel is to document the things that I do in my life. I challenge myself a lot. Like I said, I did a marathon, I've done bike racing, I've done triathlons, and I do stuff with my children as well. And what I try to teach my children is that when you're afraid of something, face it head on and triumph. And triumph doesn't mean winning. It doesn't mean you have to become first place or second place or top 5 or top 10 or whatever it is. It means you have to get to the point where when you're said and done, you're proud of yourself. So I gave my sons this phrase, and I said, face everything and triumph. So here's the first of many videos that I'm going to post. Hope you enjoy this one, and I hope my story in some way has taught you a little bit something about COVID and what one person's experience is. I hope everyone's healthy. Has a wonderful day.